Back here on SportsLine, our guests tonight are Mark Elliott, Gary Van Anna from Trevecca Nazarene. We're talking about the move of Trevecca into the NCAA Division II. It became official last Friday, but let's go back a little bit on the timeline here. And I'm actually going to start with you, Gary, because you were there when the whole discussion took place. And what kind of discussions, I guess the timeline officially starts on June 5th of 2011 when Trevecca officially applied. But what kind of discussions took place leading up to that? I imagine this wasn't just let's send out a memo or an application and it's done. How long did this process take internally before the external step started?
Well, there was a lot of conversation with coaches because coaches were really concerned because we were part of the NAI at that time. And there were just a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about the rules and regulations, and we're going to, what kind of process it was going to be. Were there any guarantees? Were we going to get in? Were we not going to get in? If we didn't get in, what would happen? If we did get in, what would happen? There were some coaches that were for it, some coaches that weren't. It was just a lot of questions more than anything else. And the other part, the schedule. You drop from 32 games regular season in NAIA down to 26. In the NCAA, and then okay, where are you going to play? What conference are you going to be in? There was a lot of questions like that were out there. Where we're going to go south, we're going to go east, where we're going to go north. Who are your rivals going to be if your other schools don't follow? So there's a lot of questions, but I think after we got through the process and started thinking about it and hearing about it, and we had some consultants come in and talk to us about it. Mark can talk more about one in particular that was here, but some consultants come in and talk about us and just talk about how, you need to do what's best for your university, and NCAA Division II is a right fit, and we didn't even know it.
You talk about as the process moved along, for coaches like yourself, it became very exciting because of what you were going to be able to offer to prospective student athletes. But when those conversations first started, was the feeling, yeah, let's do this is going to be great, or was it more hesitation back at the beginning?
I'll give you an example. I'm an old guy. Okay, when the three-point line came in, I was dead set against it. I said they didn't give Henry Aaron an extra run because he hit it 500 feet. Instead, he hit it 300 feet. And I was completely wrong about it. And same thing with this. At the first time, a lot of people were hesitant because nobody likes change. Things were going along well. We've had, our women's basketball team in 2008 was in the national finals. So we're sitting there thinking, we're not too far away from winning a national championship. And now we're talking about 2 years later changing and doing something else. So there was a lot of, hesitation and questions. But once you sat and looked, if you took yourself out of it, which is what we talked to our players and our student athletes, but take yourself out of it and look at the surroundings and look at the people that you're with and look at what you're a part of, and what you can be a part of. And when you remove yourself from the equation, all of a sudden you see so many different things open up, and that's what happened here. When I think the coaches started one by one removing their own personal situations out of it and looking at the grand picture for the school, it was evident that this is what we should do.
So after all of those initial discussions, the formal application goes in, and then just a couple days later, the NCAA comes back and approves it for the possibility of candidacy in year number 1, and then literally the day after that, Mark, Trevecca hires you as the new athletic director.
Yay.
What was that moment like when you not only take on a new job, but take on this huge new process at the same time?
Yeah, Dr. Boone never told me about this, and he said, oh, by the way, no, I'm just teasing. We knew that this was coming. It was part of it, and I think it was a part of the process. It was daunting. I'd never done this before, and actually Gary was the one that got me involved in the athletic director search to begin with, and but with people like that, with the leadership of Dr. Boone, with the leadership that had been exhibited from the other athletic directors prior, the history of the school, the tradition. We were already a Division II school, and in fact the guy that got us into all this, C.M. Newton, did a study of the athletic department, and he said, you're a Division II school and you don't even know it. So we were acting like one, we were doing things like one, but part of the process was making sure you could guarantee and prove that you were doing it. So there were a lot of documentation, a lot of forms, a lot of procedures that we had to write. And Larry Knight, our compliance director, and Steve Harris, our associate provost and dean of student development, those were guys that really put us on their back and trudged us through this process and wrote over 3,000 pages of documentation that got us through this whole process. Daunting, yes, but with capable people to get us there.
When you were hired, was essentially your mission for at least for the first 3 years solely this project? Or how much could you handle the day-to-day typical athletic director duties?
Well, we had a short discussion before we got on the air, and I said, you know, we spent 3 years doing this. And I went to work after the press conference. The press conference was on Friday, and I went to work on Monday, and I sort of sat down at my desk and I went, what do we do now? It really sort of felt that way. There's plenty to do, believe me. But there was an odd moment there where we really didn't know where we were supposed to go next. Now let me go back. The mission was, yes, to get us into the NCAA, but that's not the primary focus of our athletic department. When Dr. Boone hired me, he said, inject the school's mission into the athletic department in a greater way. And the mission is to train and equip student athletes for leadership and service. And that makes it easy when you have a mission statement like that. I didn't know if I could help get us into the NCAA, but I knew I could help us with that mission. And again, with people that we have, the coaches, the athletes that we have, that mission is not done on a daily basis the way we want, because we want to get better, but it makes it a lot easier.
The number to call in tonight, 737-7767. We have lines open if you would like to join in on the discussion. Terry has called in. Terry, good evening. You are on with Mark and Gary.
Hey, good evening, and I appreciate you taking my call. I've kind of followed just city basketball for quite a few years and enjoyed the rivalries with Belmont, Lipscomb, and Trevecca, and kind of followed Trevecca a little bit as I was just hanging out in the city. But it seems like in the last few years, just the men's basketball program hasn't been stepping up as much as I would like to see them done in the city here. And with the change in the NCAA, is there any plans to make that a more competitive program, or just what direction that's going? And enjoy coming and watching the games over there, and it's always fun, and hoping they do better and get it going here for too long. I appreciate you taking my call.
Thanks, Terry. We appreciate the call.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, our men's basketball program has not had the success that we wanted over the past couple of years, but they've had a long history of being very good. They're going to continue to be very competitive. There's basically a brand new team that's coming in, a lot of new recruits. You know, each sport at Trevecca has its own uniqueness within the scheme of the Great Midwest Athletic Conference, our new conference, as well as the NCAA. Men's basketball tends to be the most intense, most scrutinized, and quite honestly, it's sort of the flagship. The men's basketball, women's basketball are kind of always been the flagship of the athletic department. And Sam Harris, our basketball coach, has been there for 20 years. He deserves a chance to kind of fix it and get it back on track and on the rails again, and I think he'll do that. We're giving him the chance to do that. And so I fully suspect we'll be very competitive within the conference and compete for NCAA tournament possibilities in the near future.
You just mentioned the GMAC, and you became the charter member of the conference way back in November of 2011. Talk about the process of identifying a conference and where you were going to go and where you were going to make your home once you made this transition.
We knew at the outset that the NCAA was very keen, very aware, made us very aware that conference affiliation was supremely important. We didn't know it at the time how important it was going to be, and so as we were looking at the landscape, at the geography where we were looking with the different conferences, there really wasn't something for us. We were on an island out here with no schools to the west, to the east, to north, south, too far away, and we were an outlier geographically to all the conferences. So we sort of decided that what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create our own conference. We did that, and I dare say that the toughest part of this, and maybe most satisfying, to be quite honest with you, the most grueling, and then obviously the thing that probably gave us the greatest headaches, but also the most education, was creating a new conference. When you have to write constitution and bylaws and operating codes and all that for a new conference, trying to attract other schools that are either reclassifying from a different organization or reclassifying from another conference, that's kind of a testy, tedious thing, because if we don't have an automatic qualifier that comes from our conference, we don't have conference grant funds coming in because we haven't been an official conference long enough, why would any school want to come to us? And so to sell our conference and to not have the trappings of an NCAA fully active conference, which we do now, was pretty difficult to get one started. But we pulled together a consortium of schools, and even though we have probably too large a geographical footprint, we want to create southern and northern divisions of that conference. It was still probably the most satisfying of all the things that we did during this transition.
You have a handful of schools from West Virginia. You've got a couple from Ohio there, a couple from Kentucky as well. Cumberland's going to join you here from the Nashville area. What was the pitch initially? As you mentioned, when you're trying to create a new conference, there's not a whole lot to try to pull people in. What was the pitch to get this group of schools from various different areas to come together?
Well, Steve, I was in sales for almost 20 years, and you know, you sort of adjust your sales pitch to the time and to the need, and we weren't being wishy-washy. We weren't trying to change the message, but you know, when we went to a central state, historically black college and university, it was, we would like to diversify our pool of talent. Wouldn't you like to be a part of that diversification? When we went to another school like Kentucky Wesleyan, we said, you know, small private Christian faith-based kind of schools, we would like to be able to play against those. And so we sort of tailored the pitch to the people that we were talking to, but all the time we knew that we had to have centralized geography, centralized philosophies and relatively close budgets and schools that were at least similar. And that's what we were after.
There's 11 schools in the Great Midwest Athletic Conference. Cumberland's a lot like yourself, moving from NAIA. What's sort of the breakdown of the others in terms of, are most of them making that move as well, or are some of them past NCAA Division II members that are making the conference switch, as you mentioned? What's the breakdown?
All of them are current active NCAA Division II members. Ursuline, an all-female school up in Ohio, received their active status 1 year ahead of us. They were 1 year ahead of us in the process. But everyone else was Division II active members. Cumberland, Georgetown are seeking for admission, and they'll start that process as soon as they get admitted to the NCAA Division II process.
Gary, from a coach's standpoint, when you go into a league where most of the schools have already enjoyed the NCAA status, what are the challenges you're going to face initially?
Well, I'll tell you what, once again, excitement. You know, the unknown in a competitive situation is just, I think, what a lot of people live for. You go play a place where you've never been. You know, you're on the road in West Virginia. Not only have I never played in West Virginia, but I've never been to West Virginia. You go up to Ursuline, and I finally found out what snow effect, lake effect snow was. I had no idea what that was, but I do now. So going to a place like that, it's a challenge, you know, to play. Like when we got to Ursuline, there were 4 inches of snow on the ground when we began. There was 8 inches of snow on the ground when we left, you know, and then we got to figure out how to get home. And then you drive 2 hours south and you realize there's no snow at all because it all came off the lake, the Great Lakes. You know, and getting your student athletes to prepare for those type of things. And then going to Kentucky Wesleyan, where they've won how many men's national championships? 7 men's national championships, and the place is packed before the girls' game is even tipped off, and you're playing in front of that kind of crowd. Even though most of them are waiting for the men's game, but still, they're still into the basketball. So you go to those kind of places. Then you come to Trevecca, and you watch these teams come to Trevecca and realize that there's not a tougher place to play, I think, in anywhere really than our little gym in front of our more maniacs who are incredible, because the bleachers come right down next to the floor, and you can reach out and touch the the referees. We don't, but you can reach out and touch the referees and the other players on the floor, and it's loud, it's noisy, and it's just a tremendous home court advantage. So just bringing all that together and letting people know who we are. You know, we have a Pops Duncan Classic, for example, that we've had for years. Right at the end of the NAI years, we were struggling a little bit trying to fill it. And now it's become one of the top NCAA Division II tournaments. People are just calling us saying, hey, can we get in it? We want to get in it. And we're seeing some of the top teams in the country that want to come to Nashville and play. So it's been great for us.
Certainly exciting times down at Trevecca Nazarene. We've got to take a break. We will come back, talk much more about this move into the NCAA after this. Stay with us. You're watching SportsLine.